Is a lot of people have got at me and asked me about the end of hostilities and whether or not it would extend to the streets. And to be totally honest with you, I don't see that happening, at least not anytime in the next generation, man. Just yesterday in Yuba City, a little small town in Northern California, about 45 minutes north of Sac, there was a drive-by that where two people were killed and three others were wounded at a little barbecue. And there's no doubt it was gang related. I mean, I know the house that it happened at just from living up there, and I know the people, that hung out there a lot, man. And there's just whatever goes on in the pen, there's homies from both sides, big homies that people have to answer to. And there's a real good chance to get, you know, discipline if you violate any of the standing orders in there, which I'm sure no matter which side violates it, the discipline would be swift and very, very, it would be monumental discipline if somebody, broke anything that the big homie said regarding what they got going on with that and the hostilities thing. But on the streets, man, a lot of the you got to remember a lot of these people on the streets that are banging and for north or south it don't matter. A lot of them never even been to the pen. You know what I mean? Like if the individuals, the ones that I believe were the victims in this situation are the ones I know, they haven't been to the pen. You know what I mean? They're just out there banging. And believe it or not, them little small towns, man, they're putting in work. I mean, both sides. It's not just an urban problem, a big city problem, nothing like that. Like in Yuba City, man, while I was up there, I seen quite a few homicides, through for the gang stuff. A lot on both sides. You know what I mean? So what's going on in the pen, no matter, even if the orders were sent out to the streets, there's always going to be a younger generation and a hot-headed generation, that have beef with these people. They're going to run into each other at stores and things are going to be said out of, just being a young dude, being macho. Like, man, look at these dudes with their LA hats, or look at these dudes in their Chicago Bulls, or whatever, whatever, how they used to identify each other, man. It's gonna crack off like that, man. And I just don't see no way that either side could monitor the behavior of such a, with both organizations having such a far reach everywhere with all kinds of splinter groups. Not every hood has a big homie. Not every hood's gonna have people that guide them to do the right thing. You know what I mean? I know 15, 16-year olds, man, even younger, that have been victims of shootings, drive-bys. And that's just in little Yuba City, bro. You know what I mean? That's not nowhere like on the front lines in some of these places. You know what I mean? Some of these places, you're running across people every day that you might not necessarily see eye to eye with. You know what I mean? So, honestly, the answer to that question would be no, man. I don't see it ending, and it's there's nothing that the people in prison can do. I mean, they can promise all kinds of repercussions for these actions and whatever, but man, it's going to continue, you know, indefinitely. There's always going to be beef between the sides. In the pen, it's able to be monitored and curtailed. There's no way of getting around. Well, I'm just going to go do this. No, you're going to be held accountable. You know what I mean? And of course, you're even going to have them guys that'll be like, man, I don't care what they're talking about, man. I don't like them dudes. I'm going to go handle my business. There's been, a few decades now of, upstate Serranos being, more common than they were prior to that period. And there's animosities on them streets. You know what I mean? Like they took out one of our homies, we took out theirs, and I swear to God on my mama, if I ever see that dude, and man, them guys are gonna handle that no matter what anybody says. I mean, because the worst thing that's gonna happen when they get to the pen is they're gonna be like, hey, you did that on the streets. Well, man, you can't be doing that, bro. You know what I mean? Unless it's someone who's already educated. Because people who end up in prison, after after doing any kind of crime, as long as it's not no kind of funny thing, or there's an innocent or something like that, they're gonna have an opportunity to be schooled. I can speak from that experience just based on the side I used to represent. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to hold nobody accountable for their actions in YA. We're not going to hold nobody accountable for what they do on the streets. When you get that CDC number, your reputation, pretty much, as long as you don't have none of those R type offenses, is going to start from the day you receive that number and your actions from that point on. There's not going to be like, oh, when you were 16, you were, at this gas station, and somebody hit you with their hood and you shot them, and that's against the rules, so you're going to be disciplined. That's not really going to happen. You're going to be educated first, and if that's a no-no at that time, you're going to be told why, and you're going to be you're going to be brought up to speed. You know what I mean? You're not going to be held accountable for things you do before you know better. Because that's not fair for the individual. You know what I mean? And it's not a good look for the organization to punish people for things that, man, you can't punish a 16-year-old kid for out there being down for his hood. It's counterproductive. So that's basically my take as far as the end of hostility reaching the streets. I mean, it's not something that's realistic for any time in the next generation, to be honest with you. If the order came out like today that, hey, there's going to be no more of that stuff, it'll still take a half a generation to taper off. You know what I mean? Before it's instilled on the youngsters, that are, man, they're banging in high school, bro. I used to drive by schools and you'd see 15 Southerners and, the same amount of Northerners, like on opposite sides of the parking lot, just like eyeballing each other. And you know what I mean? So it's going to take a long time to weed out that animosity, if it can even be done. You know what I'm saying? So, man, just a short answer is no. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But we can hope for it. You know what I mean? Because I think it's the betterment for everybody. Personally, I'm not with that kind of stuff. So I want to see everybody just be able to chill and thrive together. You know what I mean? Now, the second thing I really wanted to touch on, man, is regarding like the Second Amendment. Now, once you commit a felony, only in very rare circumstances in California can you get it expunged and get your, right to bear arms back, right? You're going to get it for a DUI. You're going to get it for, probably a petty theft or grand theft or, maybe some kind of embezzlement, man. But when you have those prison level offenses, man, you got to have like one, maybe a burglary or something like that. Not no residential. You can forget about it. But if you have like a commercial burglary or maybe an auto theft, depending on what county you're in, you might have action at expungement. But my thing is this, man. If you don't use a gun in a crime, right, I don't think you should lose your gun rights necessarily. You might have to be vetted, maybe more so if you've done time, than the average person that goes through these background checks and whatnot has to be with the, the 10-day wait and, whatever it might be. Maybe they can make it so you have to pass a psychological exam or something like that because, none of my crimes that I've been caught for have involved the personal use of a firearm. You know what I mean? I've had probably 7 or 8 possession of a handgun by a felons. You know what I mean? Going back all the way to being a juvenile. However, since uh, I've never been to trial for using a firearm in a crime. Do you think everybody should lose their right to have a firearm to defend their home? I've heard of like bills that have came up talking about when you've successfully completed your parole, if you did not use a weapon in your crime, you're allowed to own a registered firearm, but it's not allowed to leave your residence. I've heard things like that. I've heard that mentioned in Texas and stuff like that. But my personal opinion, you know, you've done your time. You know what I mean? Like, why shouldn't you be afforded that right if you didn't use one in a crime? You know what I mean? You get 5 years for involuntary manslaughter when you commit a DUI and it has, deaths that have resulted for it, and you go to prison. They don't take your vehicle rights away for life. You know what I mean? So I was just wondering what you guys thought of that, man. Like, personally, I think I could be trusted with the firearm right now. Like, you give me a gun, it won't be discharged except to prevent my life or those in my immediate vicinity from being harmed. You know what I mean? And I'd be willing to take the psychological test, and I'd be willing to have, like, a 6 month waiting period and all this and that. But I think in today's day and age, if you don't have a firearm to defend your home, you're at an extreme disadvantage, man. You live in some of these places where home invasions are popping, or you live in a disadvantaged area where there's a lot of robberies. Man, you could end up being a victim at any time. You could go into a store, a bank, a jewelry store, man, anything at the wrong time when somebody's trying to get paid. You know what I'm saying? And you too could become a victim. And why should somebody who's committed a crime and done their debt to society be any less entitled to be able to defend their life? Because you made a mistake X amount of years back, you shouldn't be afforded the same opportunity to defend yourself, your family, and your property that the next man does. Now, don't get me wrong. If you committed a murder and it was like an aggravated murder, it wasn't self-defense, you discharged a firearm in the course of a robbery, you know what I mean? I get it. I can, man, I get it, bro. You know what I mean? Whether I like it or not, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. So whether I like these things or not, it's irrelevant. What I'm saying is, why should I be punished and be denied the right to defend myself and my family because of a mistake I made? Say, man, I'm 46 now. You know what I mean? The last time I caught a real felony was in the 90s. I don't bother nobody. I'm not robbing no stores. I'm not going to kill no one. You know what I mean? Except in self defense. I'm going to exhaust every option before I pull that trigger. Personally, that's just me. You know what I mean? I'd rather box you. You know what I mean? I'd rather hit you with a stick. I don't want to have to murk you. You know what I'm saying? And I know that there's a lot of people just like me. You know what I mean? And it comes usually with age, that kind of responsibility and outlook. Do I want a kid that is a gang member? He goes down at 18 and comes out with a 22, and now he can have his guns back. Is he necessarily rehabilitated? Probably not. This the kind of things that come with age. The respect for life, and things of that nature. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious what A lot of you guys out there are felons. A lot of you guys out there never been in no trouble in your life, and you're just interested in the gangster lifestyle or whatnot. What do you guys think about that, man? Should a felon, no matter what he did, lose his gun rights for life, or should there be like some kind of, you know, hey, you do 10 years clean, you don't have no firearm use of a firearm in your history, you got 10 years clean, man, you should have your gun rights back because you've proven that you haven't been, violent towards society in a decade after you've successfully completed your parole or whatnot. But I just think, man, that it's just unjust almost to a certain extent. It's bad enough, you lose your ability to do certain jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't work in a pharmacy, you can't be an EMT, you can't go work for you can't go be like a forest ranger, bro. You know what I mean? Like to help the poaching of wildlife. Just stuff that, man, somebody who had aspirations to be that kind of person, they've obviously gone on a new path in their life, but now your record prevents you from doing it. I just don't think it's cool, man. But every day, there's another reason when people are doing all these shootings and stuff to make my statement look like like I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's kind of a question for the audience, man, and we could debate it more about the Second Amendment, man. Should you get your rights back? I think you should in most situations. The last thing I'm going to touch on this subject, man, is well, not this subject, but on this little video, man. I know it's like a couple different, it's almost like a Q&A where I'm touching on numerous different things, but this last one's going to be about these stimulus checks. I mean, everybody's happy to get this money. You know what I mean? 1,200 the first time, and then what was it, 600, and now another 1,400 coming up. What I don't think a lot of people realize is somebody's going to pay for that in the end. The government doesn't create necessarily their own source of income. You might have, excuse me, a couple different things where, the government's making money by doing things with other nations and whatnot. But let's just call it 90% of the money generated by the feds in the state is it's coming from the backs of the labor force. You know what I mean? Everybody working in the country is paying taxes. 370 million people in the country, X amount of workers, they're all getting taxed. I mean, you got your under the table type people, but that's not the majority. You know what I mean? That's the minority. And not only that, it's not just your income tax, it's your sales tax, it's your property tax. It's, man, the California got $3 in tax on the gas. You know what I mean? Out here, it's not so bad. It's a lot cheaper, but man, it's still going up. But I'm just wondering how many people realize that, all these things, there's going to be a time when the government figures out a way to get that back. You know what I mean? And I was just wondering, I mean, how many of you guys know about that kind of stuff? You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, I see all these people all happy, like, oh, we're gonna get this check. Man, that's great. Put that in my account too. But I know in a couple years, this is gonna go up. That's gonna go up. And what they like to do is disguise the stuff, man. Like, oh, these Measure C tax dollars are gonna go to fixing the bridges. Bro, we already pay money to go across the bridge. We already pay to use the commuter lane. We already do all that. So they try to trick you, man. And when you go across these raggedy roads, you'll be like, oh, I don't mind paying another 4 or 5 cents, $100 or whatever. But you think over the billions and billions of dollars adds up to a huge sum of money. You know what I mean? And things like that are going to happen. You know what I mean? You're going to forget about like half of the taxes that you normally get back. If you try to claim like I used to do, I'd claim one. You know what I mean? And my checks would be small. Well, they wouldn't be small because I make good money, but at the end of the year, I'd claim my normal dependents and I'd kill them on the tax returns. They're going to find a way to X that out. And I was just wondering, man, if the kind of person who listens to my show or this genre, if you guys understand what's going to happen with this. You know what I mean? Just food for thought. And make sure you guys are on the lookout come Friday, man. Flacco and Gunner are going to get together and bring you guys something really, really special. It hasn't been heard before. And it's going to answer a lot of questions that have been, somewhat loosely addressed recently, on this platform. So stay tuned. And once again, man, we appreciate you guys, man. I'm going to try to go live at least a couple times a week, in public. And then I'm going to try to do a couple on the members only. And we're just going to keep continuing to knock this stuff out for you guys, man. We appreciate you and have a good day.